Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And today I'm joined by my co-host, SuperBlondeNerd, Corinn. Corinn, thank you so much for being here. How are you? How's your channel going? How are you? What's going on?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me as always. I'm doing pretty good. Channel's doing great. Been very excited to just keep seeing those numbers steadily climb up, and I'm very excited for all of the things coming in the fall spooky season for the channel. So, yeah.
Yes, spooky season is here, and we were wondering before the stream, when do you start celebrating spooky season? Corinn, how about
Mhm.
yourself? When do you start celebrating?
Oh yeah, my house is already decorated for fall slash. I have like a little Halloween shrine set up, just area. So I'm super excited. Been planning out my Halloween costume, all that. So yes, I'm very excited for spooky season and fall stuff.
Excellent. We basically get ready as soon as September hits. We seek out pumpkin spice everything. We get start playing all the over the garden wall tunes, and I'm so pumped because this year I have a friend of mine who actually designed some curriculum that's about over the garden wall. So I'll get to use that with some of my high school students this year. So very thrilled. But we are here to talk about all of the games that we've been playing these last couple of weeks. And Corinne and I are going to go through 3 different games that we are excited to talk about and have something interesting to share with you all, and maybe we'll even pose some questions that we're excited to hear your answers about. So, Corinne, what is your first game today for our collab for what we've been playing?
Yes. Well, if anyone recognizes the artwork that is on the thumbnail, it is the game Photosynthesis, which is a game that I actually haven't played in quite a while. So it was really nice to play this game over vacation, which was where I was last week. And yeah, it was just a really fun time playing Photosynthesis. It is a very tactile, aesthetically pleasing, as I have covered in one of my videos. And it's a just a fun, different type of strategy game than just I would say like it's just like a new flair and flavor and look of a multi-layered strategy game, and as well as just the dynamics of how you are to strategize. So you're basically trying to plant and have as many trees as possible go through their life cycle, and that is how you get points. And the further in on the board you get, the richer the soil is. The richer the soil, the more points you get when your tree goes through their full life cycle. And this is a great picture too, because it's kind of showing the sunlight, the sunbeams. So that Pac-Man looking thing on the outside of the board is the sun, and it will constantly rotate around the board, and it will cast sunlight onto your trees. And depending on what other trees are either in front of you or behind you, that will determine if you get sun points or not, which is what you need to in order to do anything in the game. So we had a really fun time. So I played it with my husband and his family, and then just me. And we just had a really fun time. And it reminded me of just all of the different strategies and ways that you can go about playing photosynthesis, and where you like focus. If you're trying to get to that middle soil piece first, because that has obviously the most points, or if you're just trying to plant as many trees as possible, not really caring about where you're planting, but just trying to get as many trees going through the life cycle as possible. So it was very fun to see all of my family go through different scenarios and strategies of how they won.
Excellent. So, have did you just play with the core game, or have you dived into the expansion at all? What do you think of photosynthesis overall? Where does it rank amongst your games?
Ooh, so we haven't dived fully into the expansion yet. I We've played it, I think, once with my husband, just me and him, like a two-player mode. So I know that that definitely adds stuff, because I know that there's like different creatures that add certain, I think, bonuses or something to
Mhm.
add to the gameplay. I really do enjoy photosynthesis. I would rank it high in the sense of introducing people to board games, or a little bit higher strategy board game. Like it's not the top or anything like that. It's not super hard to learn, and I think it's a fun visual and again tactile board game. So I think it's a really great introductory board game, or a board game to have and play with people who maybe aren't like avid board game players. So I would rank it high for that purpose, and as well as the aesthetics. I love the way that they created this game and made the trees and
I
everything. So
I think it's really funny that there's some board games that make you really interested in researching specific types of things, like in photosynthesis, figuring out, ooh, what kind of tree is this? Or
yes.
arboretum, you're like, ooh, I love jacaranda trees. Or
Hmm.
wingspan, you're like, oh yes, a crow, my favorite type of bird. Yes, just the wingspan I was looking for. It's really funny to me when you suddenly become really invested in the flora and fauna and
Yes.
really being specific on the ones you like. Is there a tree that you like picking?
Um, I it's gonna be so basic of me, but I really enjoy the orange one because it's fall and like I really enjoyed it. It's also I think all of the trees have the little artworks, but I always enjoy seeing there's like a very fat bird that is
There he
like
is.
hidden inside all of the trees. So it's really cute. But yes, I love the
You
orange
can
one
see the
because
fat
fall.
bird right there.
There's so many fat birds. It's so cute. That's another reason why I like Wingspan.
So I
So
would
very
say
cute.
that you may have been more basic picking the green one
Oh,
personally. I think
sure.
that's a very basic tree color. So I think you're safe there.
But I'm also a basic white girl who likes fall. So there's that too.
Oh boy. I think there's a song for that. I'm pretty sure.
I'm not shocked at all. You probably haven't heard it.
So this is photosynthesis. What is you were talking about a bunch of different types of strategies that you enjoyed. What's your
Mm.
favorite strategy to employ in photosynthesis?
Ooh. So I don't know if it's the best strategy, but going for the center soil is usually my go-to, and then as well as trying to create the best lineup of my trees. So I remember playing with one of our good couple friends, and she had a whole line basically that was like a clock where it just was just straight across the whole thing. So, and the way that she had strategized it was her middle tree was the tallest, and then it shrunk
Mm.
as it went out, which was really smart because when the sun hits your tree, as long as it's taller than the tree in front of it, still gets sun points. So she was able to get a lot of sun points for the majority of the time that it circled around the um, board. So I learned from her about that. But yeah, definitely trying to grab the more richer soil because that's where you get the points from. So definitely like they're categorized or shown like the richer soil by the dark green as well as the amount of leaves that are on the circle. So I go for the 4 leaves and the 3 leaves.
Gotcha. Now, the biggest criticism that photosynthesis receives is that it's a very mean game, very punishing and very crushing. Do you agree with these statements, or is that something that you've experienced yourself?
I guess there is a level of meanness, especially depending on how competitive you are and
Hmm.
how others are, how competitive others are, because you can obviously place your tree right in front of someone and just really just isolate them from getting any sun points the majority of the time, and being real jerks about it. We were not like that with this last time that we played because we were teaching people, so we tried to be kinder in that sense. So I guess I can agree with that. I don't. Maybe these people need to find better playmates if they think it's such a mean game. Because I don't ever want there's always that level of like you don't want to have a bad time playing
Yeah.
games. Like yes, obviously, because I think you even talked about it in your like was it top 10 things you hate about board games or 10 most problematic things about board anyway, but you
Yeah.
talked about like anger and like just uh bad sportsmanship, like people with bad attitudes, basically. Like if you're not, like it's a game. So,
Yeah, it's
um,
interesting. Like the meta of your play group almost becomes this. Oh, if I know that I probably shouldn't bring this game to this play group because this is how it's going to go down.
yeah,
Whereas you might bring it to another group and everybody has a fun time. So
yeah,
I can see that being a big thing. I'm actually going to bring it back to Arboretum. I had a recent experience with that little small card game where
mhm,
you can be terribly mean to each other, or you could be super friendly and discarding cards for people as
yeah,
opposed to
yeah,
helping them. So
yeah,
I think that's a definitely good perspective here.
yeah. I think a lot of people too, like an arboretum, could. it just gets to a stalemate because you have to have at least one card to receive the points for all the
Mhm.
trees that you lay out in front
Yeah.
of you. So if people are just stealing your cards or don't give you the one card you need, or they're holding on to all the other ones, like, yeah, it just becomes a stalemate. And it's like, well, then no one wins in that sense. So yeah, it just, I think, depends on who you're playing with.
And I think that's super interesting because there are games where people are cooperative and they're helping each other out, and then those games will be like the highest scoring games ever. Like you'd
Mm,
be like, "Whoa, this is insane! I've never seen scores this high." And then you have the other players who are very restrictive and try to punish, and not necessarily punish, but prevent others from
mhm.
scoring points, and then those become a lot more close and more tense. So I think
Yeah.
I think you're totally right here. It's going to be dependent on that play group.
Yeah. And it's not
Anything?
to say you can't be competitive, but
Hmm.
just the level of competitiveness and how much it affects you.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Anything else to add on photosynthesis, Corinne?
We got deep into there. No, it's a beautiful game. I definitely would say, like, if you don't have it and you are getting into board games, give it a try for sure.
Okay. Sweet. So that's our first game. That is photosynthesis. A beautiful game. You've got trees. It's awesome. Cool abstract game with a wonderful theme. And that brings us to my first game. My first
Mhm,
game here is Unmatched Battle of Legends. Now I talked about this I think a couple of times on the channel here, but this
mhm,
one in particular I have something really cool that I want to show you. If you're unfamiliar with Unmatched, this is a game where
mhm,
it's a
mhm.
fighting system. You're going to have a character fighting against another character. And one of the most brilliant things about this game is it's a variety of IPs. You'll have things like Jurassic Park versus things like Sherlock Holmes versus the
Yeah.
characters from Buffy. And I'll show you a quick picture here of all of the different feints in the game. And this is just a single card that many of the different characters have. And you could just see all of the different artwork
Mm.
here. You've got Beowulf, Red Riding Hood, Deadpool, Sherlock Holmes, Jekyll and Hyde. There's some amazing characters in this game already. But something really interesting about this game is the fact that it's based off of Star Wars epic duels, but there are no Star Wars characters in the
Huh.
game. So this is a restorations game project partnered with Mondo, and they took this old game, Star Wars Epic Duels, that was a very fan favorite, and they revamped it, streamlined it, and created this new product that has been selling like hotcakes. And I can see why. This game is so much fun. It's one of my favorite in this genre of the head-to-head battling because of how streamlined the rule set is, how easy it is to teach and play, but the depth of strategy in the actual decks of cards. But I've been really enjoying looking at the fan made content for the game, which is not
Mm.
something that I normally do. However, there is some fan made content for Unmatched that is so refined and so tested. And I'm just so impressed by the fact that it exists. People have played the heck out of it. So it's very well vetted and tested. And I want to show you one of the coolest fan made expansions here, and this is for The Mandalorian. So The Mandalorian
Ooh.
expansion is wonderful. You have a character who has been vetted and designed very very well. Is very thematic in the way that it works. You have his ability here, which is you're going to be trying to find his Beskar armor as you play the game, and every time you use the Beskar armor, all of your cards in your deck get better defense values. So
Mhm.
much fun. And then on top of that, his cards are very thematic. If you've watched the first season of the show, you have all of these cards that are some of his catchphrases. You have a lot of cards that are dependent on the child being alive, and that's Mando's sidekick is the child. And there are even some cards in here that are exclusive for the child, where he can even use his own little force blast. I love this expansion so much. It does a great job of feeling balanced, where your character's not too overpowered. He's got a lot of smaller damage attacks, but he does have that great escalation feel as he's going to get stronger over time. But he does retain a lot of the one singleton copies in his deck of very thematic tools that the Mandalorian would have. He's got the flamethrower, the grapple gun, these small little bullets that'll be going around. He retains a lot of the flavor from the show, and you see that here. And you also have that dependence on protecting the child, and you're going to have a tough game if you don't.
Mm.
But the child himself is also very strong with the force capabilities, and so you're going to use him for his force healing, his force push. This is such an excellent set. And on top of the cards and all of this stuff that's been designed, there has been a huge outreach by the fan community on Etsy in particular
Mm.
that has created Mandalorian miniatures for this specific set of cards.
So
So
cute.
you can go get the cards and easily print them, put them on just in like some hardback sleeves, and then you can go ahead and print out your own version of the Mandalorian. And there's so many different versions of it. I'll just go ahead and open up example here on Etsy, but pretty dang impressed. There's some really cool stuff here when it comes to printing your own miniatures for the game. So big fan of The Mandalorian,
cool.
big fan of The Child, and I think that it's so cool that this fan content exists. So that brings me to my question for you and for the audience. If you're watching here live, please let me know in the comments, what is a game that you love that has quality fan content for it? And what's the best you've found? So far, this Mandalorian Unmatched expansion has been one that's really high tier for me, and just the not only enjoyment, but the refinedness of it. It's so well done, so well planned out, and it's one that just feels like it's part of the game right now. And I love it. I love it so much that it's so well done. And I'll leave a link in the description of the video below so that you can find your own copy of this and you can go print them out. It's very simple. Just print out the cards, and you can even reuse miniatures from another character if you're not feeling like getting your own copies of miniatures or anything. So Corinn, what do you think? What's a game that you love that has some quality fan-made content for it?
So I know that we talked about this a little bit earlier. I don't have a specific game that like I can find fan-made stuff for, but just thinking about stores like Meeple Source and other stores that just add the little bit of upgrades to your game. We bought for our friends the Root. Instead of having your little cardboard pieces and all that, it was all the plastic upgraded 3-dimensional 3D printed showings for the fort, for the Forest Alliance, and then for the cats, which I can't think of.
Marquis.
Yes. The Marquis de Cats, yes. They have all of their little factories and the wood places. Yeah, so all of that stuff was added. And that just adds so much to the game, and it's really fun. The fortress for the cats, and did we get anything for the birds? No, I think it was mainly Marquis de Cat, the Forest Alliance, and then all of the little like indications of what land is which, like a fox, a bunny, or a mouse. So like those kinds of things. There's really cool that obviously like fans of the game and people of the game like obviously like came together to like make this kind of stuff. So that's really cool. It does remind me of a game that my brother and I made 5-10 years ago, like just for fun. We just basically made a Disney version that was kind of like Pokemon / Yu-Gi-Oh, you know.
Oh yeah.
standard Disney trading card battling thing. So I helped do a lot of Photoshop, insert the photo here, and add the description of what their powers are and all that stuff.
Now, I don't know if you know this, but they are creating a Disney trading card game right now.
Of course they are.
It's kind of insane. Like it just got announced. It's by Ravensburger, so the same company that does like all those puzzles and Castles of Burgundy. It's called Arcana.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it's going to be their own Disney version of something like Pokemon or Magic the Gathering. So
oh my gosh,
you know, it's coming. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
your childhood dreams
Dang
are
it.
being fulfilled right now.
We could have patented it before they did it. It's fine. Yeah, I mean they're just coming out with the Disney like version of Animal Crossing, so you know that's coming soon. Which I'm thinking my brother shared it with me, but it's basically you're interacting with all of the different Disney characters. You can create your house and then help them with like different house things that they need, and like slowly making the whole neighborhood and everything kingdom like look better and pretty and all that stuff. So
gotcha. Excellent. So if anybody is watching or watching later, we'd love to know what games you love that have amazing fan-made content. Some other things that I can think of just off the top of my head. I think Dungeons & Dragons has some incredible fan-made content for it. Lots of one-shots. There's so many Kickstarters that just have content for just scenario books, which is wonderful. The fact that that has such a growing, thriving community. Marvel Champions has some great fan-made content. Arkham Horror with their own custom cards and campaigns. So some really fun stuff. Big fan of just fan-made content in general. It shows that people are excited. I'm really a big fan. Sweet.
And so many
that
times,
is my
like,
game. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, so many times the fans make just as good quality stuff because they love it so much.
Absolutely. Excellent. So that is Unmatched Battle of Legends and the Mandalorian expansion. Corinn, what's your next game you want to talk about?
The next game that I want to talk about is Splendor.
Aha.
We also have the cities expansions. So that one is really fun. So Splendor is a tableau building and I guess trading, because you're buying cards to build up your inventory of gems to gain more cards to gain points to also gain what are they called? Not vendors, patrons, and then rank up to a certain amount of points before becoming the victor. And I love Splendors, at least the way that they have the ones that we have, which is like the gems are like poker chips. And so
Mhm.
you keep those for, or you trade in those to buy certain cards, which then you'll have permanent a card there permanently, which will tell you like, oh, now you have one ruby forever, or you have one diamond forever, all that stuff. So the cities expansions, we didn't play with those again because we were teaching our family how to play it, but I really enjoy the expansions as well. It's just a little bit of variation in the gameplay. I think one of my favorites is I think the one that you're pulling up, which I can't. It's not cities, but they add it's like exploring, they add another land basically, or like you explore into kind of the Asian area or Asia in general. And so in those cards they add, and those have red backgrounds, they have cards that represent two different types of, or not two different types, two gems on a card instead of always just getting the one gem per card, even though it's worth a lot of points. But just to have two gems on one card like really adds to helping either the game expedite or be able to just buy more things, as well as there's a card that is a wild instead of the token that you usually get, as well as adding some more benefits to the second and third tier that if you buy a third tier card, you will not only get the gem, but you'll also get a second tier card for free. They also let you, those ones right there
Right
with the
here,
red
yeah.
background. Yeah. They also allow you to um get bleh. They also allow you to reserve a patron instead of just hoping that you were the first person to get um the requirements that can get you into the patron. Yes, those.
Aha!
You did it.
There we go. Found
Yeah,
them.
so they're more expensive, but as you can see, there's the double gem amount on there, which is really nice, as well as there are different benefits that you can get and just add to the variety of the game. Cities, you just have to meet a requirement, and the first person to get a city will win the game. And you have to go a little bit higher in the pointage. Usually, the base game, the first person to 15 points wins, but some certain cities you have to get to like 16 points in order to get the city. So again, it's just adding a little bit more variation, a little bit more depth to the game, which I think I enjoy.
What do you think about this one, the Chevron one? This is actually one of my favorites that comes in the expansion.
Yeah, I really enjoy that one too. Again, you're meeting certain requirements, and then you have bonuses basically like the whole time, which is really nice. Like the trading in, I think it's like the two of the same to get one of of a different type, or trading in a wild to get two of the same type. Yeah, there's a lot of like really nice added bonuses to those, and I like the excuse me the different symbols for like whatever color that you're representing for the bases or the fortresses or whatever they are. Yeah, so I think all of the different things that come with the expansion, just the variation of gameplay is really nice. Am I missing one?
You are missing one, and this is the one that most people don't like. This is like the commonly
Oh
dunked
yes.
on one. The fortresses, I think these are called.
Yeah, that's why I probably didn't remember. Yeah. Yeah. That one is like you have to, if you are really interested in a card, you place a fortress onto that card, and then you only have I think three fortresses, and depending on how badly you want that card, you can put up to I think three fortresses, and that's basically reserving it without uh, actually taking the card and getting your free token, your free wild token. So I'm
Mhm.
not sure if that's why it's probably not as popular, because it's kind of the same action, but you can reserve more, or reserve or just say like I'm interested in this one, and it prevents you from taking it from me, kind
I
of
think you
thing.
summed it up pretty well, actually. Like, it's replacing something that I already thought was really good in the original game.
Hmm.
I think the reservation system is really smart in the original Splendor,
Hmm.
personally.
Yeah, yeah. So I would say 3 out of 4, which is pretty good for adding all the different
Yeah,
types
seriously.
of expansions. So yeah, I wouldn't knock it out. So yeah, I
Out of
really
all of
enjoy the
them, which is your
expansions.
favorite?
Of the expansions.
Yes, out of all the expansions.
Mm. Honestly, probably the first one that I talked about, which I
Yeah,
feel
the extra
terrible that I
cards.
can't
Mhm.
remember. Yeah. I like the extra cards because again, it's in you so instead of just having like the 4 or 5 laid out cards, you now have I think like 6 or 7 because you add those cards in as well. So again, more variety, more choices to make.
Mhm.
But there's also a lot more strategy now that you can like incorporate into the game.
I agree with you. I think that these expansions are actually really strong. And the biggest concern for it was the price point of the expansion. It
Mm.
was more expensive than the base game and didn't really have a lot to offer
Um,
inside. But I think this expansion is pretty dang good. It
yeah.
makes me, this is what I want to play Splendor with if I do play Splendor. I
Mhm.
really like the special abilities and powers. I think that the new cards, as you described, they give you more options because there are 2 added to each row. So that's really cool. And I think that it just gives you more venues and opportunities. And even the end game scoring one, I think, is also awesome because
Mhm.
you're not going to be doing that same process of, okay, I just need to figure out the quickest way to get one of those large point cards, then make a big flop at the end for like a quick 5 or 8 point
Mhm.
swing, which usually ends up being the turn flow and Splendor. In this case, you have specific things that you are going to be fighting for because now you know that there are specific ways to end. So it's almost like ramping up the original nobles, but still not decreasing the importance of them, which I really like.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, my husband and I didn't have to run into that because he got it um, at a game store where it was in the, like, used section, so there
Oh,
was a
perfect.
yeah, there was a big, crunch on the end corner of one of the, boxes, so he got it for half price.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's value.
Yes.
Oh, there it is in all its glory.
Yes, it's so beautiful. Yeah.
Nice. Anything else to add on Splendor? What are your thoughts on this game for introducing new people to the hobby?
Ooh. I would definitely start without the expansion. Yeah, no, I think it's a good introductory
Mhm.
game as well. Again, different. It just depends on what kind of game people are looking for, because obviously this is more card based, um, but fun tactileness with like the poker chips and all that. So.
I totally agree. The poker chip, the tactile factor is huge in this game. The satisfaction of just collecting things, turning them in,
Mhm.
and getting better. This is a very simple engine builder, and I think it does the job really well.
Yes.
So this is really funny because this ties into my next game pretty dang well. And this is the
Yeah.
one that I have on the cover of the screen. It's another very simple engine building game that focuses more on a draft as opposed to having a market of cards that you can be picking from like in Splendor. So this is a recent delivery from Gray Fox Games. And the only reason that I bagged it, I'll be honest with you, is I heard that it was a very intro engine building game, but it also came with abacuses. And I thought that was so cool. The
Mm.
fact that you were able to check your victory points with abacus, and they actually work pretty dang well in the game. So happy that it actually is functional. I think they could be a little bit better quality, but they are functional, and that is Arcana Rising. So Arcana Rising is
Mm.
actually very similar to Splendor, where you are going to be collecting these cards in front of you, and the more cards that you collect, the stronger you're going to become. However, and here is the biggest twist here, is when you are taking a turn in Arcana Rising, you have a simple choice. You are either going to play the card that you take in front of you, or you're going to discard it to activate the cards that you already have. And that is amazing. This takes the idea of engine building and really distills it down to the smallest choice possible. Am I going to build my engine, or am I going to run my engine? Those are your two choices that you're going to have throughout the entire game. And deciding when and where you're going to run this engine is the biggest point in the game. So I really, really like this choice. Now let's go ahead and just show you how the game looks, what it actually maybe give you an idea of an overview of what it looks like. So in this game, you're going to have a setup here. This is maybe not the best picture, but you're going to have a setup of these three different, not three, you'll have your own private board. And on the board, you're going to have these tokens that you'll be collecting that represent the resources that they're on. So these people have one of every resource right now. You're going going to have a hand of 6 cards. You'll take one of the cards, and then at the same time, everyone's going to decide to either add it to their tableau, they'll slide it under into the appropriate column, or they'll discard it to activate one of these 2 symbols in the, sorry, not one of the 2, but the 2 symbols that are in this central area. So each of these represents the number of cards that are in your hand and what symbols you're allowed to activate when you discard the card to cast. So it's not only about building this engine, but also building it up and preparing for the future turns. You know that in the fourth turn of this round, that you're going to be able to activate the green and the red spells. So maybe in the early turns, you collect and play some of those cards that are going to be green and red. And you know that in turn 4, you're going to be able to play a double purple. So if you stack a bunch of purples, you can activate them both in the same turn, and then hopefully use those resources you just accumulated to build the rest of your engine for future turns. This is so interesting because you are taking the board for what it is. You have your initial hand of 6 cards, and you're making that decision that is going to impact you the entire game. I love this choice because all that information is out there. The gameplay is simultaneous, but it's up to you to decide which cards you're going to take. And another great thing about the cards is they all have alternative costs. You can either pay a specific resource, and generally that resource is going to be way less. For example, this card on the right here, you pay a single potion to play, or you can pay anything for it. But usually it's going to be way more. So you can pay a single potion or 3 or whatever you want. And then there's another resource in the game that's very easy to produce. It's called blood, that is basically used to pay for that wild resource, but it's worth negative points at the end of the game. So if you're making it, you got to make sure that you spend it. So it pushes you to play more cards than you're actually generating. It's such a great dynamic here with one of the factions. And then on top of that, there are also cards that have instant abilities that you can play right away and get a single effect instead of adding it to your tableau, but it's not necessarily the casting action. So it's kind of a split decision in there. And there's just a lot of cool design choices here and great decision points. You not only have to plan for the future, but also figure out what you're going to be doing in the now and how that's going to impact you in the overall game. I'm very impressed with this game. It is so much fun to play. The only ding that I have for it is I don't think the solo mode is particularly exciting or interesting. I really do like the gameplay with the multiplayers. Having that entire hand of cards and potentially getting some of them back is one of the most interesting portions of the game. Trying to purposefully discard cards in order to trigger combos, using the effects of your opponents, not the opponents, but taking cards in anticipation that you'll receive some back. It's the stuff that makes drafting interesting to me. It's the same reason that I like things like Seven Wonders. But I think that's Arcana Rising has a great blend of these choices, and in particular, that presentation of that choice of, am I going to build my engine or am I going to run it? So really happy with this one. Any questions about this one before I pose my question?
Is there expansions yet?
There are not expansions yet. So this just delivered to me at least 2 weeks ago, and it was a Kickstarter delivery. But,
very cool.
Got to play it quite a bit already, and I'm quite impressed. It's very easy to teach, very easy to play, and it's fun to play. Every turn feels good. You're always either building or producing something, so it's just got great feelings throughout the experience. So very happy with this one.
Very cool. I like it.
Me too. And this brings me to my question. What games do a specific mechanism simply but exceptionally? So for me, I think that this game does engine building very simply but quite exceptionally. It has that super distilled choice, and I think it does an amazing job with it. So Corinn, what do you think? What's a game that does something simply but exceptionally?
That's so funny because that also ties into the answer that I thought of, which was Dominion.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just a great deck building and engine building game, and even with the expansions and the different cards that add to the base game, like your duration cards or your reaction cards. Well, actually, I think those are in the base game, but like your curse cards and all of those, all the extra things. I'm trying to think of another, like ruins. Ruins are fine. They definitely add annoyance to the game, but all of the different, I think most of the expansions, if they have like an additional type of card, I think overall though, I would say like 75% to 80% of the cards are useful, and it just depends on, of course, what is in the, as you said, like the market for what cards you have like
Mhm.
available that you can buy. So I think Dominion's one of me and my husband's like favorite games to play, especially together, just like as a 2-player game. We just do like a random generator now to just bring out the different cards because there's just so many that we have, because we have 4 expansions in
Okay.
Dominion. So we have a lot of cards that we can either randomize or choose. We played recently one that we chose like our favorite cards, and that was like super fun. So there's just a lot of really fun and different ways to play the game. And I think it's a really simple, as you said, like a simple but very good mechanism for this game, which is deck building and engine building.
That makes sense. And this was the first deck builder, which is awesome. So it makes sense that
Yeah.
this is the and they have just continuously improved with different mechanisms, which is super exciting to just see continuous innovation on this solid foundation. What's your favorite card? You were saying that you played a game with all your favorite cards. What's your favorite card in the game?
I mean, you have Village on there. Honestly, it's a simple one. It's really great. I do love Village. There's so many. I'm trying to think. Village is a great one. This one's so annoying to my husband, but I really love Magpie.
Okay, what's that do?
Magpie, basically, I think you always pull a card and you have an extra action. And usually that action is whatever the Magpie says that you can do, which is I think you check you pull a card from the next card in your deck, and if it's a certain type of card, like if it's a treasure or like a point card, you can discard it or keep in your hand, and then if it's an action card, you get another Magpie. So
I found it.
basically, yeah, it's an action victory card. Oh, I was so close. Okay, if it's a treasure, put in your hand. If it's an action victory card, gain a Magpie. So you just stack up on magpies and then just do this over and over and collect like treasure. So it's very fun to like get treasure pretty quickly, or just to be able to basically elongate your turn so that you get more treasures and stuff like that. And so it's very obnoxious though, because I'm just like, and I magpie, and I magpie, and I magpie.
I think that's
Especially once you
very
get a
thematic, no?
yeah, maybe a little bit.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that one's really fun. I've had a really fun time with that one.
So good. So if any of you have any games that do specific mechanisms simply but exceptionally, please let us know down in the comments of the video. Love to hear it. Another one for me that hits my head is I think that For Sale does auctions super well. I think that it has a great blend of 2 distinct auctions in 2 distinct halves. I think it does it simply but exceptionally. You simply are going to be betting and you drop out, or you are going to be using those cards and just revealing. So it's that blind simultaneous reveal, but you have that information of what the other opponents have been gathering throughout the game. So I think that that's another game that does auction mechanisms very simply, but very exceptionally. Cool. So that is my second game. That is Arcana Rising. And Corinn, what is the last game you want to talk about today?
The last game that I want to talk about is Carcassonne.
Another
Just
classic.
yeah, we just brought like again because it was for vacation. So a
Mhm.
lot of our games that we brought were like classics or very simple introductory
Mhm.
types of board games. So Carcassonne is another very good simple introductory to a board game. Again, a different mechanic. This one is you're basically building your board. You have all of these little square tiles. Now we have the river expansion, so there's like a starting and end tile with the river. And I don't know if that originally comes with, I think that's what my husband said, which was there's a
Mhm.
river. But that just kind of determines a little bit more how your village will start. And then everyone gets a turn and goes around and just picks a random tile and then has to place it somewhere. So there are roads that need to connect. There are grasslands that need to connect. There are cities that need to connect. And just depending on what you pick up, you will obviously have to place it in next to a square that corresponds with the tile that you have. So that one was really fun. I think my husband beat us like terribly. But cities are really good, but also farming is a very, I don't know if it's underappreciated, but it's like the secret winner. Because you usually place your farmer at the beginning of the game ish, or you kind of forget about him because he just sits there. Once you place him down on a grassland, he no longer does anything. You can't use that meeple to claim any other place. And that's how you also play the game, is you place your meeple, whatever tile that you bring up. You can choose to place a meeple there. So there are chapels that are worth 9 points if you have all 9 tiles or 8 tiles around the chapel. Surrounding the chapel, there are cities, and if you have the most meeples in the city that is connected, you are the sole owner of that. You get the points. Because there are ways that other people can be in your city because of like how you place your tiles and stuff like that. And then there are roads. On the roads, you could be a thief, and depending on how many tiles it is to be on the road, will determine your points for that. So there's just a lot, again, different. It's enough strategy that it's interesting, but it's not too hard to determine, like not too hard to like off to offend people or like make them not understand the game, I would say.
I think it's a really great concept of this board that starts so small and then
Mhm.
immediately begins to build out. I think that's just such a fun idea of a game where a lot of people will look at this and not have seen it before, especially if
Mhm.
they're just starting out with games. And I think it's a really great concept. And for the expansions, you said that you were playing with the River expansion. Are there any other
Mhm.
expansions that you commonly play Carcassonne with?
We actually don't have any other expansions, which is
Hmm.
surprising because apparently there are a billion of them. So I think it would be very interesting. I need to research and go into them because I think that would add to the game. I don't know. Do you have any expansions? Have you played like certain Carcassonne expansions? Do you have ones that you recommend?
I'll be honest, I don't really have any ones that I recommend. So Carcassonne's not a game
Oh,
that I play a lot of.
okay.
I think the game is cool. I think it's fine.
Mm,
It's not one that really draws me back. I have played with a couple of expansions. I had a friend that was
mhm.
really into it, and I believe we played with the river. I believe we played with it's like Princess and Dragons or something like that.
Okay,
I can't tell you. I'll be honest.
that's okay.
It's one of those moments where you say, "Sure, yeah, I'll play a game," and they hand you this gigantic bag that's clearly has like 100 expansions in it.
Oh
I'm totally
God,
guilty of doing that, of being like, "Oh
sure.
yeah, we'll just teach you the expansions. It's super easy." But I definitely was on the receiving end. I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And this is a person who is notoriously not very good at teaching rules. So I was like, "Oh my gosh, what have I done?"
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
my goodness.
Okay, well, I'll do my research and get back to you on that.
Yeah, I'm curious. So next time we talk about this, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what
Mhm.
makes a good Carcassonne expansion. What should
I'm
we
gonna
be
write that
looking
down.
for? So in the river expansion, what do you actually do with it? It looks like it's pretty prominent. Does it have to be played? Is that just a core mechanism of the game,
So
or is
it
it already established?
so it's established. So like the very beginning, you start with the beginning river tile, and then so you'll be able to tell that the river is different because of the backing of the tiles.
Okay.
They're like the opposite basically of the
Hmm.
regular tiles. So everyone basically does the exact same type of gameplay, which is just picking a random one and then adding it to the river. So then you create the river shape. And obviously you can see there's some roads, and I think it's mainly roads, that and then a couple of city spots look like.
Okay.
So that will just it just adds a little bit more of like, here are some starting points and areas that are going to obviously have to connect to like a road or a city or thing. So it just adds a bit of more of a starting point than just being like, and I'm placing this random city down. So it just adds a little bit more of an establishment of how to start.
Gotcha. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. I like that. It's going to give you that new initial setup, and
Mhm.
I think some established foundation as to what the
Yeah.
strategies you're going towards. That's cool. I like it.
Yeah.
I see why they include that one. It doesn't seem
Mhm.
like there's a terrible rules overhead, and
Mhm.
it sounds like it does really add something to the game. Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So that is Carcassonne, Corinne. Anything else to add?
No, I'm just like I said, I will research and get back to you about if there are any good expansions, and then I will take over for 2 seconds and and just say if anyone has played Carcassonne and has expansions, please type down below and let us know.
Yes, internet. Please give us your Carcassonne knowledge. Wonderful. So this brings us to my last game. This
Sure.
is a Euro game that I was very excited for last year. And I'll be honest, it doesn't come out very frequently anymore. But when it does, I do have a great time with it. And that is a co-design from Delicious Games. This is Messina 1347. So Messina 1347 has a very interesting theme where you
Okay.
are going to be playing as these lords, these high lords who are trying to rescue citizens as well as help out the city during the Black Plague. And so this is
Ooh.
co-design of Vladimir Suhi and Raul Fernandez Aparicio. And these two designers have created a game that uses worker placement in a very unique way, where
Mm.
instead of just placing a worker out onto the map, you are going to place them in the very first round and then move them around the city during future rounds. And the game features a lot of engine building, as we talked about earlier, but it has a lot of escalation where your first actions are going to be very simple, getting a single resource at a time, putting a single piece down. But then as the game escalates and increases, the costs of everything will increase because the power level of the players is also increasing. I do think my favorite part about this game as a whole, though, is that board. You're going to have this gigantic main board that's in the center of the table, and you're going to place one of your characters out on it every single turn. Yeah, sorry, on that first turn, you're going to place it out onto the board. And once you're on the board, you have to move orthogonally. So not only are you
Mm.
worried about the timing of other players potentially taking your spaces, but you also have to worry about the distance to actually travel there. Uh, you only have those options of what's around you. You can spend money in order to reach further and to skip
Mm.
spaces, but in the early game, money is so tight because it's so versatile. Money can be used for extra movement. Money can be used to go up on these different tracks. So having to spend money does not feel good, particularly when you want to start building that engine, and you should really just be prioritizing those different spaces around you. So great choices here with timing and prioritization. Now, speaking of tracks, this game features a lot of different tracks. You have this top one where every time you help save the city, you eradicate the plague. By burning it, you'll get to climb up that track. And then you have these two distinct tracks on the bottom that are almost two different play styles that you may go down towards.
Mm.
The one in the middle there essentially gives you more workers that you can use and put out in the board, which is usually a strategy that benefits in worker placement games. Just have more actions than other people. But the bottom one here is, I think, my favorite one to go down, and this is the development track. The more you do this action, the stronger your overseers are going to become. And overseers go onto this own personal board that you'll have in front of you. We find a good picture of it here, but the overseer tokens are actually going to populate this main game board in front of you. You're going to have these little circular markers that'll move into these different areas of your estate. These are the people you're helping. You'll put them into your estate to work for you in order to earn some money to help out their family during this time. Um, and so every time you move your overseer, you'll have specific workers do a specific duty. And if you upgrade them, you get to do it twice. And
Mm.
sometimes you'll even get to do it even more times based on how far you get a specific overseer. So I think there's some really cool choices on either developing your different options and choices in your actions by getting more people out there. But then there's also some great choices when it comes to your own personal board. So I like that you have a good balance of things that could potentially be interrupted by others and the placement, but then something that you have full control over here with your own personal private board. But one thing that Messina definitely features, which is going to actually bring us to my question, is a huge amount of setup. As you can see, there
Yeah.
are a lot of pieces. There's a lot of stuff going on here. And one of the most important things for Messina is in this main section here, right next to the board. And this is the setup reminders. And so every time the game ends, the round ends, you have a specific procedure you got to follow. It reminds me of like a checklist from an Uwe Rosenberg game.
Mm.
And the way that it works is you go down the line. Okay, first thing, lay down all the people. Second thing, turn this dial to see where the plague cubes are going to show up. But if it's the fourth round, make sure that you populate 2 this round. And then you're going to place those cubes out onto the board into the specific colors. And then you have these 3 different colors where you're going to populate the board with these different people that you're going to be rescuing, these different citizens that you're going to put eventually, hopefully, into your estate. And so you have to make sure you're following these. You're adding stuff to the board. You're adding new tiles, making the map bigger. You're adding these shipping containers. And then you are fluctuating the different prices, the initiative order based on specific criteria. There's a lot of maintenance between turns. And on top of that, you'll have production buildings that are also going to trigger for each player. So this brings me to my questions to you is, which games have parts of setups or maintenance that you miss? So I played a game of this recently, and on that 4th round, when you're supposed to put double the plague cubes out, Totally missed that step. Oh my gosh, it really made the whole thing way easier than it needed to be. I was like, wow, we've almost eradicated the whole plague. That's amazing. We saved the world. But that's not the case. I definitely mixed that part when playing this game last time. So, Corinn, anything that you've experienced, audience, any comments you want to drop on any games that have parts of setups or maintenance that you've missed? Maybe if it's changed the game drastically. For me, in this case, it made us eradicate the entire plague, which is amazing. So,
Makes the game way easier. That's so funny. When you sent me this question, this makes so much more sense now in this context because I'm thinking you meant you miss as in like it doesn't happen anymore. Like, oh,
oh,
like they updated the game or something. This makes so much more sense. Yeah, I was gonna say like this is very a very much like a pandemic type of game. Obviously, like you're dealing with the plague where it spreads out and all that stuff. There's almost always a time where we miss either spreading the pandemic, in the game pandemic, spreading the virus, or uh uh what is it? Like revealing cards of where the
mhm.
virus is coming into, as well as I think I've talked about this before. It was a while ago when we were playing Viticulture, and there are times where I think it's either in between at the start of summer and the start of winter, you get to choose like a visitor card or something. Maybe this
Oh,
was a
yeah, yeah,
house,
yeah.
and I never remember. And I remember and so the first time I played it, I didn't do it because I didn't know how to play, but I definitely did it the second time as well. And I was like, this would make my life so much easier if I remember to grab the cards at the beginning of the round for this season, which is like
That's
not
really
even,
funny. Viticulture has a bunch of stuff like that where
yeah,
you can miss it. One of the
yeah,
things that we miss the most is remembering to slide your grapes over at
yes.
the end of the round. That's one that gets missed by a lot of people. So
Oh
have
my
to constantly remind
gosh.
there.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. There's a
That's
lot.
so
I mean, I
funny.
think in the expansion, the Tuscany, they
Mhm.
have reminders. I think they have like a kind of reminder board. I don't remember though.
They do. It's like
Okay.
it's actually really nice. Very similar to Messina. When you
Hmm.
pass, it tells you like, okay, first discard down to this number, and
Hmm.
then readjust your stuff, and then put your worker on its wake up order track
Okay.
and claim your bonus. So I think that
Yeah.
actually does a really good job. Michael Newsom, he's in our comments. Good
Yeah.
to have you, Michael. He's got a great comment here. Robinson Crusoe, forgetting to place question marks or sliding cards. That's a really good one. Robinson Crusoe is a survival game, and so one of
Mm.
the core mechanisms of the game is you have these problems that you're gonna have to deal with eventually, and they will slide down, and when they do slide off you may have to suffer a penalty when they do, and so
Mhm.
forgetting to do that may give you extra turns when you might not necessarily would have been able
Mhm.
to, and there are even these question marks that you might need to put on things that represent that you will get an event in different areas. So that's a
Mhm.
great pick, Michael. And then we have Steve Oktar. Thank you for being here. If you have any ideas of any games yourself that have maintenance or any setup that you miss, I'd love to hear that as well. Anything else to add on this one, Corinne?
Mm-mm.
Okay. All right. So, once again, if you are watching in the future, please let us know down in the comments. We'd love
Mhm.
to feature them on the show. And that brings us to that's it. That's everything, right? Those are
Mhm.
our three games. Awesome. So those are all the games that we were excited to talk about here today. And now we're going to go quickly through the entire list of games we played. And Corinne, do you want to start this one off, or do you want to go? Do you want me to go first this time?
You can go first this time.
Okay. All right. So this week I played a total of 32 unique titles, and I'm just going to list them through here. But before I do, actually, not before, but after I do, I'm also going to list my top three and my bottom three. So these are the games that really impressed me or I had really great sessions of, and then the sessions that I didn't really have so much fun with. So let's going to go through the whole list here, starting with Unmatched, Battle of Legends, Marvel Champions, Blood on the Clocktower, Condottieri, Cat in the Box, Strike, Six Nimbit, Crokinole, Lorenzo Il Magnifico, Quacks of Quedlinburg, Messina 1347, Ubongo Duel, Mythic Mischief, Abyss, Brass Birmingham, Bullet, Foundations of Rome, Dune Imperium, Awkward Guests, Arcana Rising, Razor Goblets, Marrakech, Trudvang Legends, Dead Reckoning, Meadow, Legendary, X Files, Seven Wonders, Dice Realms, Viticulture World, Trajan, Expancity, and Pictures. My top 3 game experiences from this were actually Blood on the Clocktower. I got to play the Sects and Violets expansion for the first time, and it was so fun to run. This was probably the busiest I've ever been managing the game, and it was incredible. All the
That's awesome.
weird and strange interactions and abilities, characters turning into different characters, and people needing to go mad for things. It was amazing. And then Seven Wonders was also up there with the trying out the new Armada expansion. The Armada expansion is very good. I was really surprised because it looked very fiddly with all these little tokens, but
Sure.
I really was really impressed. And this just continues to make me think that Seven Wonders is peak drafting. It's so good.
It's
That
so
game is
good.
so good. And the
It is.
second edition has made some amazing changes. And then lastly, a surprise game that I really enjoyed was Marrakech. It's a cute little game where you're putting down these rugs on each other, and it's got a roll and move mechanism that is
Oh,
surprisingly fun because it's almost a push your luck roll and move
okay.
mechanism, but you're
Yeah.
pushing your luck on your opponents moving into territories that you're laying. You're almost laying
Okay.
these rugs as traps. It is so much fun. I was really surprised with how much I enjoyed that one. And then the bottom 3 were Expancity, Mythic Mischief, and Trudvang Legends. So Trudvang Legends is a like bag building combat game, and I was learning how to play it and trying out the campaign, and I got stuck in a
Okay.
situation where it was just really miserable. I was like, okay, this sucks. So I reset the whole thing and ran through it again, and the second time was just okay. So
Mm.
hopefully, maybe I was just the learning curve of the game, but I hope it gets better. Mythic Mischief, I confirmed my suspicions. The solo mode, I think, is the way to play it. The 2-player, I was able to do dishes in between turns, and that sucks. That means that those
Oh,
turns are taking way too long. The
yeah.
other one was the I tried the team version where it's 2v2. Also, the turns are incredibly long. So,
Mm.
not a big fan of the multiplayer game in that. Once again, in that one, I was able to go outside, walk the dog, come back, and it was still not our team's turn. And that makes sense. It's a team game. So, already you're going to have that communication, which is going to make it really long. But also, just the fact that it is a abstract game with so much perfect information, it is going to cause some AP because got to make sure everything goes right because it's a very close game with only 10 points you're racing to. And lastly, Expancity. This was a really hot game at Gen Con, but it was a game that was very restrictive despite having lots of choices. It
Mm.
reminded me a lot of something like Takenoko, where you're constantly getting these things, and some of them are just better than others, or some are more limiting than others.
Mm.
You're trying to get out these different buildings and tiles in order to satisfy the scoring criteria. And sometimes your scoring criteria will just flat out be awful or just won't mismatch. Or then the game might get to a point where you have a lot of scoring criteria and those don't match. And because you're pursuing some, you can't pursue others. And it leads to just a very frustrating experience with not a lot of really good moments. Not one
Mm.
that I really want to come back to. So I think that one's probably on the bottom most. Like I don't think I'll go back
Mm.
to that one. But
Do you
those
think?
are the games. Go ahead. Go ahead, Corinne.
I was just gonna say, do you think you'll donate it? Take it out of the library?
Do I think I'll donate? Expansity was actually a friend's copy, so he was very excited
Okay.
to try it, and I was
Okay.
very excited too. I'd seen it looked great. You had these really cool pieces that stack together and make up this city and expansive.
Mhm.
But I wanted to try it because if it was great, it would go into the library. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, it did not. So.
Okay.
And Corinne, before you go through your list, we have a couple of comments here.
Ooh.
We've got Stay here who says, I forgot to double roast and coffee roaster when I reached the red marker. Excellent for things that you constantly forget. And
Mhm.
Emily says, great playlist. Thank you, Emily. And then, wait, I like Mythic Mischief as a solo. Yes, I really like Mythic Mischief as a solo game.
Mhm.
I don't really like it multiplayer. So those multiplayer experiences were on the bottom for me, unfortunately, but do like it as a solo. And then Stay also says, another Marrakech game by Stefan Feld is coming out. That is true. It's a
Mm.
more big, involved Euro game as opposed to
Mhm.
this one is very light, very family
Okay.
friendly. You simply roll a die and move your character. So
Nice.
yes, I actually thought that when we were going to play the game, this Marrakech was going to be that more complicated version.
Mm.
So when it was suggested, I was like, ooh, interesting. And then it came out, and I was like, what are we playing as we're laying all these rugs down? But I
Yeah.
was thrilled. I really like that game. So
That's
I'm a big
awesome.
fan. I'll have to find a picture of it. It's really pretty, actually, because you're putting out these literal rugs on the board. It's
Yeah.
so much fun. So cool. Corinne, what do you got for me? What are all the games that you've been playing?
So I played six games um, since last we talked. We were on vacation. That's what I'm gonna
Totally
say.
understandable.
Yeah. So I played Splendor, Carcassonne, Photosynthesis, pun intended, Phase 10, and Yahtzee.
What is Phase 10? I've heard like
It's
whispers of Phase 10.
it's it's like a rummy type of game if you've ever played that a card
Yeah, yeah,
game.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a very long game.
yeah.
It goes for like 2 to 3 hours. So
Do
I
you
would
like Phase 10?
I do.
Okay.
It's definitely a game if you do not mind kind of not that the what's it called? The turns take long because you're just, you're drawing cards and trying
Yeah.
to pass, but just like it's a good conversation, having conversations while you're playing the game, I would say. But
Gotcha.
yeah, it's very rummy. 10 phases that you need to get through in order to win, but you could rack up points. I almost got to 1,000, which means I was losing.
Ah!
Yeah. The cards, if you are stuck with like a wild, I think it's 25 points. If you get skip, it's like 15. And then, of course, tens are worth, their double digits are worth tens, and then single digits are worth 5. So you're accumulating things. And then if you don't lay down during the phase, whatever phase you're on, you're stuck in that phase and you go to the next round. It's a good game. I don't play it often, but when I do, it's a good time. And again, like conversations are had, and it's just a good family time. Um,
Totally
so
makes sense.
I enjoyed it. So I would say my favorite out of all of those, like favorite experience, was probably Splendor. And the reason I say that is because not only is the game really fun, but my father-in-law totally cheated, and not on purpose. Because we were watching him, because
Yeah.
you have
You
a
can only have
limit.
10
Yeah,
chips.
10 chips. No, he had like 17. He had just a pile of like brown or whatever the actual gems
Yeah.
are. We're like, how did we miss this? It was towards the end of the game. It really didn't matter, but we were just like, oh my gosh, Dad, what are you doing?
That's so funny because probably
Yeah.
the first like 60 or 70 times I played Splendor, I played with no restriction on the
Oh,
amount
what?
because it was a game that somebody had taught to me incorrectly.
Okay.
And so I was just
Okay.
perpetrating these lies until what my sister actually, she was like, you can only have 10 chips. And I was like,
Okay.
that's it
No.
completely changed the game.
No.
Excuse me,
Yes.
I don't understand.
Yeah. Definitely makes it way easier to just hoard all the gems.
It makes it so that it's actually a lot more challenging because you get
Yeah,
onto turns where you can't take an action.
that's true. That's
Insane,
true.
because
Mhm.
there's no possible things for you to take or things to buy, and so you'd
Yeah.
have to do some passing. It was wild.
Yeah.
Oh
It was a
my
good time.
goodness. Emily has something here. Emily says Splendor was second ever game played and played it wrong so badly as well. Thinking the cards that they put in their hand were free to play. That seems very good. It seems like you
Mhm.
would have very short games, Emily. Just picking up those big cards very early.
That's
I
so
totally get it
funny.
though, particularly when it's one of your early games. It's you're reading a new rule book, entering a new space.
Oh,
It
yeah.
could be very hard to sense what's super important to make sure you pick up in the rules and what is
Yes.
out of place as well because you're not really
Mhm.
sure on all this balance stuff. So it's like, oh, and as soon as you realize, you're like, oh, that totally makes sense. How did we not guess this the first time? So I
Yeah.
think that's pretty great. What would be on the bottom of your list if you think, or another one that you really enjoyed?
Another one, I really enjoy photosynthesis,
Yeah.
also because my mother-in-law and me won, because we were a team. Because it's like,
Oh, fun.
yeah, I think it was only 5, no,
Mhm.
4 players? Yeah. Whatever it was, we worked together, so we won. I was proud of those. Yeah. No, it was a good time.
That's awesome. I did find a picture of Marrakech, so let me show you that really quick. It is really pretty.
Ooh,
So you have this
yeah.
his name is Assam. He's going to be moving around the board here, and if he lands on your carpet, whoever's turn it is has to pay you based on the amount of territory of your
Oh
carpet
my
that's on the
gosh.
board.
I was
It
wondering if
is
they would be little pieces of fabric. That's so
It is
cute.
little pieces of fabric. It is so charming. The
That's so
board is
nice.
fabric. You have these tiny little rugs that you're putting out there. The coins are made out of wood. This character piece that's moving around is made out of wood. And I love that there is a push your luck aspect to your turn because at
Mhm.
the end of your turn, you determine where the character is facing. and then on your opponent's
Mhm.
turn, they roll the die, and that determines how much they actually move their character. And then where the character lands, that's where they're able to place. And it's got a great way of self-balancing, because when
Mhm.
the character moves, if it lands on your piece, you're gonna sorry, if it lands on your color, that person who landed is gonna have to pay you money. But now
Mhm.
that player gets to lay down a rug, and they're next to all your stuff, so they're probably going to end up covering your stuff. And I think that's
Yeah.
really interesting. So I think it's a good game. I like this game a lot. It's very easy to play and very fun. Quick turns and just
Yeah.
good raucous. I think it's so much fun. I really like this game.
It's so cute. Yeah.
It's adorable. Woo! So those are all of the games that we've been playing these last 2 weeks. And thank you so much for being here and watching. What games have you been playing these last 2 weeks? Have you played any of these? Do you agree with any of our thoughts here? And don't forget the questions that we listed for you. What's a game that you love that has quality fan-made content for it? And what's the best you've found? Which games have parts of setup or maintenance that you've missed, and which games do a specific mechanism simply but exceptionally? And of course, don't forget Corinn's question about Carcassonne. What's the best expansion for Carcassonne, and what should she be buying for her collection? Corinn, anything else to add?
Nope. I will have more games next time. I promise.
No worries. Where did you end up going on vacation?
We went to Vermont. So we got to experience some fall weather before fall was over. It was beautiful. Just and really enjoyed both being outdoors, but also staying inside and playing games. It was a good combo.
Perfect. Starting the spooky season off nicely. And
Yeah.
thank you so much, Emily, for being here. So happy that you played DOS Hospital and loved it. I'd love to
Oh,
hear if it's got a good solo mode. It's one that I like. I like dice placement. So glad to hear that one was good. And you're great, Emily. Thank you for watching. And
oh,
thanks for
thank
being here.
you.
And that's it. Make sure to check out Super Blonde Nerd over at her channel. She does all sorts of things, and Spooky Month is coming up. So be ready. She's shown me a preview of some of the stuff she's working on. So please go make sure you're subscribed to her. Some amazing stuff on its way. Sweet. So we'll see you later. SideGame Strong, y'all.